And welcome in, folks, to Open Mic Night. I am your host, Noah Taluki, and we have a loaded menu for you today. Lots happening in Detroit sports right now as we begin to ramp things up, especially with football coming back. We'll get more into some Lions talk later, but I also wanted to talk a little bit about the big news from this weekend with the Detroit Tigers. The heralded pitchers from the minor league system, Casey Mize and Tarik Skubal, made their major league debuts. We'll discuss more about that as well. And then at the end, I wanted to talk a little bit about the Pistons picking 7th in this upcoming draft. The draft lottery held last week, and the Pistons now picking 7th. We'll see who they are going to get as well. Hopefully everybody had a good weekend. I definitely did. Played some golf, went on the boat, and overall just had a good time. We'll be moving into Cleveland to back to school this week later, but I'll still be continuing to do this podcast. I'll be taking my equipment up there and hopefully getting some guests and all that. I know we haven't been able to have some guests in the last few weeks or so, but hopefully next week I'm going to have my buddy on. We're going to talk some NFL football, and then after that, hopefully getting some more on. So that's something I'm definitely trying to focus on. I know having a guest is really, really awesome. And I'm definitely trying to work on having some more. So it'll be a lot of fun, and I'm really excited for the future of this podcast as well, joining the Detroit Sports Podcast Network family. So it should be fun now that I guess my internship is over, if you will. So right now for the Motor City Kitties, I know that's their nickname, but the Tigers, they've kind of fallen off the cliff right now, if you will. They lost all those games to Cleveland earlier and then really struggled against the White Sox, but kind of went back on their winning ways by taking 2 of 3 from the Cleveland Indians this past weekend. And now they have a big series coming up against the Chicago Cubs. And for a long time, the Tigers just couldn't even win a game. I mean, it was embarrassing, especially giving up all those home runs to Tim Anderson. I mean, can't even figure out how to get him out on the White Sox. I mean, that's unacceptable. You shouldn't be giving up all those home runs to Tim Anderson and to one specific player if you're in the MLB. I mean, you got to figure out a way to get somebody out. I thought that was embarrassing for the Tigers this weekend. However, as the losses piled up, Al Avila made the announcement that Tarik Skubal, Isaac Paredes, and Casey Mize were going to be up on the roster and make their debuts last week. So with CJ Cron now out for the year with season-ending knee surgery, moving Candelario over to first base and then calling up Isaac Paredes to play third, I thought was the smart move and the right move. Obviously, we need to develop Isaac Paredes and give him that major league experience and give him a real shot. And this season definitely proved to be the right one since Cron got hurt. And that kind of opened up that spot at third base for Paredes. So, and then he homered last week as well for his first career home run. How about that in the majors? A grand slam against the Indians to win the game 7-4. First win against the Indians. I think it was 21-22 games or something like that. Impressive outing there from Isaac Paredes, and I think he could be a part of the team for a long time. And this is the top bat that the Tigers had in their organization coming into the season, outside of arguably Riley Green, who hopefully will be up next year, the year after, somewhere along there. I'm excited to see him. But anyways, the first pitcher to debut for the Tigers was Tarik Skubal, and I was really, really looking forward to this one. Might have been looking forward to it more than the debut of Casey Mize, because we kind of all knew that Mize, as soon as Mize was drafted, we all kind of knew he was going to be up at some point in the coming years. Well, number 1 overall pick, excellent stuff, excellent splitter, by the way. We'll get more into that too. But Tarik Skubal, a 9th-round pick from the University of Seattle, a guy that kind of flew under the radar. Nobody really knew much about him. He just kept getting better and better. I was more excited to see his ceiling in his debut than Casey Mize. But then the first batter of the game for the White Sox against Tarik Skubal, Tim Anderson. Could not get him out, gave up a leadoff home run. I remember I was watching that and I thought, oh my goodness, here we go. What is this, the curse of the Tiger pitchers already? And then I thought, okay, it's the first batter. Let's move on. This guy still has some pretty good stuff. But going into the game, we all knew that he was going to be on a limited pitch count. I think the Tigers had announced before the game that they were only going to have Skubal throw about 50 pitches or something like that. So I knew that would be about 4 or 5 innings, somewhere around there. So I'll be honest, I wasn't expecting like some huge performance there from Skubal, but obviously I thought he would be better. Obviously giving up the home run to Tim Anderson and just missing on some pitches. Only lasted 2 innings, gave up 7 hits, 4 runs, and only had 1 strikeout. So not as impressive as we all might have thought it would be, but I mean, he was on that limited pitch count, and definitely just only his first major league start. Then on Sunday in the 7-4 victory over the Indians, he looked a lot more comfortable, I thought. 2 1/3 innings, obviously still on a pitch count, but only gave up 3 hits, a run, and struck out 5 batters. The fastball seemed to have a little more life on it, and also mixing up some pitches with the changeups and the sliders that he was throwing. So overall, the first outing maybe didn't go as well as Tarik Skubal thought it would go, obviously, or any of us, but he seemed to settle down against the Indians, and I still have confidence in him. Tiger fans out there, don't think that these 2 starts should dictate how his career is going to go. I think this is a very talented Tarik Skubal that flew under the radar his entire time in the Tigers organization. I think he's poised for a great career in the Old English D. So I'm excited to see how he develops. And another pitcher is Casey Mize, of course, making his debut the next day against the White Sox in a 5-3 loss to the White Sox in Chicago. Now, going into that game, I had a feeling that the Tigers would give Mize a little bit longer of a leash than they did with Skubal. I thought he would maybe go 70, 80 pitches, somewhere in there. And yes, he did last a little longer, threw more pitches than Skubal. He went 4 1/3 innings, gave up 7 hits, 3 runs, but he did strike out 7 batters. So that definitely showed some life. And I'll tell you what, as much as he gave up those hits, just those hanging fastballs that a couple of them were just belted as home runs. Gave one up to Encarnacion, I know. But I'll tell you what, I really like Casey Mize's splitter. Now, that's such a deadly pitch because coming in at the batter's eye, it looks like it's a fastball, but then it's got that changeup speed that just dips at the last second and just completely fools batters. And I was impressed with seeing Casey Mize throw that. And last year, he was hurt with the Erie Seawolves, the AA affiliate for the Tigers, so he didn't throw as much as they anticipated, but in my opinion, he really impressed me, even with the 7 hits, and they lost the game and all that, but those 7 strikeouts really stood out to me and just reminded me of how special Casey Mize is. And I know on the broadcast they were talking about how he always is wanting to get better. And that's, I think that's key for a major league pitcher, and especially somebody who's that high of a draft pick. You can come in and think you're all that, and I've had all this success in college, but the fact that he's grounded and wants to get better each and every day is the start of how somebody becomes elite in the MLB. And so I think with Casey Mize having that mindset of always trying to get better and all that, I think he's going to be great in the Old English D, just like Tarik Skubal is. And I'm really, really excited to see how he progresses as well, because he, that number 1 overall pick, he definitely looked like it, especially with those strikeouts out there against the White Sox. But forget about the loss. Just focus on Casey Mize here, because he's special. And he will be pitching again at the time of taping Monday night. So we're not sure how he's going to do in his second start yet against the Cubs. But I'm looking for more. I think he'll improve on his second start, and it'll just keep going up from there. All right, so I wanted to get into some Lions talk, because a Lions linebacker that they just signed this offseason, Reggie Ragland, who was on the Kansas City Chiefs, the Super Bowl winning team from last season, he came out and said some comments that a lot of the Detroit sports media outlets put out there, and I thought it was very interesting, and I think it's something worth mentioning. He said, and by the way, Reggie Ragland has been having a tremendous training camp, is what I've heard. He's bringing a lot of energy, and he's going to be a great addition to the defense. When asked about the Lions, and they were talking about the Super Bowl a little bit, Ragland said, and I quote, "I see the same qualities in this team as in Kansas City. We've got the pieces. We've just got to keep putting them together and just keep playing hard and being consistent and just keep finishing. I think we've got the guys to do that. We've just got to go out there and just play ball. Wow. When was the last time we heard a Lions player talk like that before? The same qualities as a Super Bowl winning team. And I'll tell you what, I think, the media was just looking for a story and really, really picked up on that. And it's definitely fuel to the hype train. However, I just wanted to think about this quote for a minute. Where exactly is Reggie Ragland coming in on this? Where is he coming from on this? Now, first of all, I think Reggie Ragland was a good addition to this team. Obviously the championship presence, the championship atmosphere that he was around in Kansas City last year. He's a veteran. He's that locker room presence that every NFL team, and I talked about it a couple weeks ago, every NFL team just loves those guys who are great in the locker room and are true pros. And he definitely is somebody that is like that for sure. And obviously, even stuff on the football field. He's a good run stopper, and that's something that the team struggled with last year. They struggled to stop that run for the most part, especially when guys like Snacks Harrison were hurt. Also, what I've been hearing from training camp, he's also very coachable, and that's something that's key in the NFL. With the veteran and all that combined, definitely somebody that can help this team. But I find these comments interesting because we all know how the Lions have been. First year of Matt Patricia, they go 6-10, and then last season 3-12-1. So they just keep going down with him. But when you think about it, who's complaining about the coaches this season? I haven't heard any players complaining about any training camp routines or he's making us run after practice. All that stuff we've heard in the past. We haven't heard any of that, and no complaining. I think part of that is that Bob Quinn has all of his own guys on the team now. Everybody on the team, minus Stafford and a couple of the special teamers like Muehlbach and Prater, everybody else is his signings. It's his draft picks. So it's completely his team now. And, I see the Lions, talked about it a little bit last week with our training camp preview. If they can go 8-8, 9-7 around there, maybe sneak in the playoffs, that's definitely a win for this season. That's definitely where they want to be. But if anything goes below that, I think everybody needs to be fired. But going back to Ragland's comments, I'm just wondering, what is it that he sees in this team where they have the same characteristics as the Kansas City Chiefs? Is it the fact that they're gritty and they want to win? Is it the fact that maybe there's a lot of people that are coachable? Is it the fact that everybody is buying in to what Matt Patricia and Bob Quinn are selling? The whole buying in, because in the NFL, you got to be bought in to win. If guys on the team aren't bought in, you're not going to win. You look at last season for the Lions. You had Darius Slay, Quandre Diggs going after management and talking about things that happened in team meetings and at the practice field and how Matt Patricia would talk to the players. Guys were lashing out, and they were not happy. And look what happened. The Lions went 3-12-1. Not a winning organization. And it's been like that for decades. Now, this isn't some free agent hotbed like some other teams in the NFL. And if it was, there'd be more players that would be happy to be here. But, at least what we've seen in the past couple years, a lot of players have not been happy to be here. However, maybe there could be something now, since everybody is a Quinn signee or a draft pick, that the tide could be shifting in Detroit. Now, I'm not a big hype train guy. I want to see the team like it is. I don't want to overhype people. Like, I know there were people out there that were hyping up how awesome the offense is right now in training camp. And I think some of that could be true. I think the offense will have a great year, especially with the arm of Matthew Stafford and how healthy he stays. They got weapons. They got, Marvin Jones and Kenny Golladay and a veteran in Danny Amendola and hopefully an improved TJ Hawkinson with an improved run game and a couple of the draft picks that the Lions got and a healthy Kerryon Johnson with hopefully an improved offensive line. So they have those pieces, but at the same time, I think some people don't look at it as, well, are they lighting it up because the defense is that bad? I mean, we don't know. So that's why I'm not too big on the hype train, especially because the defense has a lot more question marks than the offense does. I've seen it in the past. Going to training camps myself as a fan, seeing how well the offense plays, and then the regular season comes around and it just is kind of average, and I think some of that has to do with the defense and how the defense has not lived up to par in the last couple years. So we shall see. I think, personally, in my opinion, I think that Reggie Ragland, what he means with the qualities, means that more guys are coachable and are buying in than in the past. That's what I think. I could be wrong, but at least that's what it seems like to me. So we shall see. I think Reggie Ragland will help out a lot on defense, and that's definitely a place where they're going to need a lot of help. And even the quality of football, we'll see how that kicks in too. No preseason, obviously. Everybody's going to have to be ready to go week 1, September 13th, against the Chicago Bears across the whole league. They're not having that pad-to-pad hit against somebody, against another opponent, to really gauge how well they do in a game-like competition as the preseason. Very, very important for NFL teams, and unfortunately, it's lost for the entire league. So we'll see what the quality of play is like come September 13th. All right, so I wanted to get into this quickly before we end the show. The NBA had their lottery draft last week, and the Pistons are picking 7th in this year's draft. Now, we could talk all day about the flaws of a lottery system, which, in my opinion, there's a lot of flaws with the lottery, and you see it in the NHL. You saw it with the Red Wings. They had the best odds, I think, or something like that to get the number 1 overall pick, and then they get the 4th pick. And then there were even some playoff teams that had a chance at the first. I know that's hockey, but that's what I mean when I'm talking about the lottery system. And we know that the Pistons were definitely worse than the 7th worst team in the NBA. And I know there was a lot of talk that they might be able to get LaMelo Ball and how awesome that would be, and it really would be. I know a couple weeks ago we had Rod Beard on talking about the Pistons. He talked about getting a point guard. They need a point guard in this year's draft, and LaMelo Ball he thought would be a great pick. I don't think that's going to happen anymore. LaMelo Ball could be going in the top 5, arguably top 3, somewhere in there. And I do agree. I think it's time that the Pistons get a point guard. I mean, when was the last time, think about it, when was the last time the Pistons really had a really good point guard? A solid point guard. If you look at it, I mean, you may have to go back to like Chauncey to say that. And so the Pistons, I think, with this pick, they need to draft somebody that's going to be on their team for a long time. They shouldn't be looking at a player that might be a nice role player or a guy that would just fit in nicely and contribute a little bit here and there. No, this is a guy that I think they need to go after and could be a guy that it's going to be maybe possibly a franchise-altering player. And I know that next year is the draft that's supposed to be where a lot of the talent is. And this is Troy Weaver's first draft, of course, the new general manager from the Oklahoma City Thunder. So if Troy Weaver can get a quality player at number 7, I think it'll make a great first impression on Pistons fans and will hopefully set up for a nice future. But I will say this. So the Pistons should be taking a point guard, but they need to be taking a point guard that can shoot. Because this team for a long time now has had issues shooting the basketball, and teams that win, you see teams in the NBA playoffs right now, the ones that are winning are the teams that have the great shooters. So in order for the Pistons to win, they have to make sure that they can shoot. Now say that the Pistons want to go and take a big, a forward or a center. They got to know how to shoot. But however, if they take somebody that is very good on the defensive end, or can rebound the ball really well. Hopefully they'll have the right coaches to teach them how to shoot in the NBA, because you see guys, big guys in the NBA that rarely ever shot threes that are shooting threes now because the game has changed so much. It's such a more wide open game. A prime example, I think, is Brook Lopez on the Milwaukee Bucks. A player at the beginning of his career that didn't really shoot the three that much has completely transformed his game and really adapted with the modern times. So if the Pistons can get a guy like that, I think that is okay, but I'd rather see a guy that can shoot the ball right away and has that shooting experience that they had in college. So I think it'll be interesting to see which route they take with that. And Troy Weaver, we talked about it with Rod Beard. He's a great basketball mind, and he's had a track record of finding success in the draft. So now that the order is complete and official of the NBA draft, a lot of names are floating out there. A lot of mock drafts are floating out there with players that the Pistons could potentially take. And we talked about it earlier with LaMelo Ball, that I think that is off the table now, because I think that's a franchise-altering player that will go top 5, top 3, somewhere in there. A couple of names that have floated out there, a center from USC, Onyeka Okongwu, the player from Memphis, James Wiseman. He only saw a couple of games in college basketball because then he was investigated for being ineligible and all that, so he just only played in a few games. So not a lot of sample size to see from James Wiseman. Also, Isaac Okoro from Auburn, and a foreign prospect, Killian Hayes from Germany, and even Obi Toppin, the superstar from Dayton, was also on the list as possible Pistons prospects. Now, as much as I would like the Pistons to take a point guard, I don't mind if they draft Obi Toppin, take him if he slides down all the way to number 7. And Toppin, 2 years of college basketball with the University of Dayton, not the best competition, in college basketball, but he definitely showed enough to impress the NBA scouts for going definitely in the top 10. He's definitely a player that would bring some headlines, I think, to Detroit, and a guy that would bring some energy down low. He's really known for his dunks. I think he set the school record at Dayton for the most dunks in a single season. A lot of SportsCenter top 10 plays as well. And believe it or not, I think the Pistons need some attention from ESPN, and I think Obi Toppin would give them some attention, really, from national media. You have not seen the Pistons really get a lot of attention, really, arguably since when they were winning the NBA championship with Chauncey and the Going to Work boys. So they need a player that can give them some publicity. Get some fans in the seats down there at Little Caesars Arena, and give more fans some hope to look forward to the future and the new brand of Detroit basketball. Definitely an explosive player, but as it is with a lot of college prospects, their defense has to improve, and that's one knock on Obi Toppin is his defense. But every time I see that, I always think that in the NBA, there's a lot of great coaches, and they have the strength programs and all that. I feel like with any of these guys that they say play poor defense, I feel like with the proper coaching and the right strength and conditioning program for these NBA teams, I think that they can always get better at that, at least to some degree. So I'm not worried about Obi Toppin playing defense, because I think he'll develop in that category once he gets to the NBA. Also, last season, Toppin shot 39% from the three-point line, which is good enough to, I think, earn some respect from some NBA teams. So definitely can shoot the ball from deep, which is definitely a plus, but definitely way more well-known for his inside game and definitely his dunks. Boy, though, what a story with Obi Toppin. Going to Dayton, not the most, highly profiled basketball school in the country, but kind of a late bloomer. He's 22 years old, but I think he was going into his junior year maybe or something like that. But he was definitely a late bloomer. This was a guy that was a no-star recruit coming out of high school. And then he blossomed when he was at Dayton. A little bit like Ja Morant with the Memphis Grizzlies. Played at Murray State, had almost no offers coming out of high school, and kind of had that zero-star recruit as well, and it just kind of blossomed as soon as he got to college. It's kind of the same thing with Obi Toppin. So I'm interested in seeing how high his ceiling will go, even if the Pistons don't take him. It'll be interesting because just for him being a late bloomer and seeing if he can actually fit in the modern NBA game. So it'll be interesting to see, and hopefully the Pistons will take somebody that can help them in the long term. Not a prospect, somebody that can help them, right away. And that would make a great first impression on Piston Fans with Troy Weaver's first draft. So that'll do it, folks. Hopefully next week we're going to have a guest, I promise. I'm really trying to get some more guests on the show. I think it would add a lot to the podcast. I want to thank Detroit Sports Podcast Network again for bringing me on board now after my internship. So I'm really excited to be working with Adam, the Jock Strozinski, and John, the Doc Macaroon. Those are great guys, and you know they run a great podcast network here with the Detroit Sports Podcast. Make sure to check their podcast out, Doc and Jock, and they have the wrestling podcast and the Michigan podcast that Steve Dace does, and they got the Fan Report and a bunch of others out there. Hearing some of Adam's old stories too. Those are always interesting, especially with the golf ones. I really enjoy listening to some of his golf stories as well. But thanks again, folks, for tuning in. Hope to hear from you next week. Make sure to check out any of our old episodes on Open Mic Night. We had some great guests in the past: Matt Derry, Dan Dickerson, Rod Beard, among a couple others as well. So thanks again for tuning in, folks, and hopefully you enjoy your week, and we'll see some great promise from Casey Mize and Tarik Skubal. So in the meanwhile, have a great week, and as always, you're listening to Open Mic Night.